Welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast, made for women who want their healthiest years to be ahead of them, not behind them. Join your host, Courtney Townley, right now as she breaks down the fairy tale health story you have been chasing all of your life into sensible action steps and lasting change. Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Grace and Grit podcast. This is your host, Courtney Townley. And believe it or not, the holidays are right around the corner, which is mind-boggling to me. It feels to me like we just started the year, but here we are, rolling into the holiday season. And for that reason, I thought it would be a really great time to remind you about all of the simple things you could be doing to help your biological chemistry out any time of the year, but especially during the holidays, because the holidays tend to be a season where I see a lot of women getting seriously misaligned with how they want to be showing up because they're adding more to do to an already very full schedule. They're spinning out in a state of overwhelm, and they're often convincing themselves that, forget it. I'll just start again in the new year. And that doesn't need to happen. Wouldn't it be awesome to start the new year feeling rested and grounded and ready to tackle whatever 2022 has in store for you? That's how I want to start the year. So what we're going to talk about today is going to help you do that. Now, there's 4 primary areas that I focus on in the work that I do with my students. We talk a lot about chemical balance, how to balance your biological chemistry so you can respond to the world around you rather than constantly live in a state of heightened reactivity. I also work a lot on strategy with my clients and students because, let's face it, if your strategy is unreasonable, it's not going to be helpful. We also talk a lot about thought management, which is managing your thinking in a way that is useful to the things that you want for your life, liking how you show up in the world, liking who you are as a person. All of that goes into thought management. And then we also talk a lot about emotional agility, which is really your capacity to feel the full spectrum of human emotion without numbing it, without avoiding it, which I think we all have experience of doing just that. I am not immune to that either. I have definitely avoided some emotions in my life, a lot of emotions in my life, which of course has a consequence down the road. So today, I really want to address the first bucket, which is chemistry. How well do the chemical processes in your body work? And Sarah Gottfried, who's a physician that really talks a lot about female hormones. A lot of you probably know who she is. But I saw a post on Instagram, I think it was, by her recently that talked about chemistry, aka hormones, because hormones are really the chemistry of your body. And hormones are the government of your body. They are what dictate what happens and what doesn't happen within your physiology. And this post that she made talked about hormones as your inner song. And I want to read the post because I think it really just beautifully illustrates the chemistry of your body. She says, your hormones exist in delicate balance, playing alongside one another like instruments in an orchestra. Throughout the day, your hormones fluctuate in rhythm, going up and down like crescendos in a symphony. Each hormone is like a specific instrument that you must play on time at the right volume in the right cadence. In combination, your hormones create a beautiful harmony, which serves as your stable sense of well-being and grace. These hormones play music to your cells 24/7. If your inner song is in rhythm and harmony, you'll be resilient and metabolically flexible. Or let's say it's like mine was at the age of 39. It can sound like noise. The clarinet is too soft, the cello is too loud, and the beat is off. It may seem like you're doing everything right with your diet and workouts, but the results don't show. Conducting the symphony may seem to be out of control, but the truth is, you have more power than you realize to bring your hormones into harmony by changing your lifestyle. End of quote. I thought that was so beautiful. Such a beautiful analogy of our chemistry, of our hormonal system. And a lot of us have heard this term thrown around, especially recently, metabolic health. It's something that I'm sure you have read or come across somewhere in media. And it's interesting because a lot of women talk about metabolism as if it's kind of a mysterious energy that they have no control over. But I just want to remind you that the metabolism is really the total sum of all chemical processes in the body that generate and sustain life. So everything that happens within your body is metabolism. And everything within your body is made up of cells. So when we talk about chemistry, when we talk about metabolic health, we're really talking about cellular health. And cellular health at the most basic level means your cells are very good at doing all the jobs they are meant to do at the right times in the right amounts. Like producing energy and transporting nutrients and utilizing energy and detoxifying. And I know that it's really easy to get caught up in the energy equation of metabolism. We've all heard of the energy in and energy out because it's really crammed down our throats in the diet and fitness culture. But even that equation does not work properly if our chemistry or our inner song, as Sarah Gottfried says, is wildly off. And if your body's chemistry, or again, more specifically, your hormones, are out of whack due to carrying a ton of stress in your life, which remember, stress comes from a lot of different spaces, your metabolism, your cell's ability to function properly will struggle. And you'll experience things like low energy and weight gain and reactivity and sleep disturbances and digestive challenges and so much more. So there are 5 simple things that if we do them consistently can dramatically help keep our chemistry in harmony. And I want to offer you kind of early on in this podcast today that I have an entire video series that's free based on what I'm going to talk about in this podcast episode today. And that video series is called 5 to Thrive. And you can register for it, get access to it by going to graceandgrit.com/5 to Thrive. So a lot of women are making the return to health hugely overcomplicated. And when we make things really complicated, we either fail to begin or we fail to maintain consistency over the long run. Now, I deeply believe that every woman is incredibly unique, from her life design to her life challenges to her genetic blueprint. That being said, at the most fundamental level, the things that nourish the human body are the same for everyone. I have interviewed countless women's health specialists and thought leaders on this podcast. And while all of them have a very unique zone of genius and perspective, there is a very common thread in terms of what they say when I ask about basic measures a woman should consistently take to improve her health story. And those are the measures we're going to talk about here today. And let me be clear, of course, the dosages of these things, the amount is different for everyone. And the challenges that people face with these 5 measures are different for everyone. But at the end of the day, I really do believe the things I'm about to talk about are the things that really matter to optimizing everyone's chemistry. So what are they? Well, first and foremost, I always start with this one, is sleep and restoration. So restoration is not just sleep. Sleep is incredibly important, but recovery and restoration looks like things beyond sleep as well. Without adequate sleep, without adequate restoration, everything else you commit to in order to improve your health will feel very hard. You won't be motivated to exercise. You won't follow through with the commitments that you make to improve your diet. Your mind will not be very focused, and your attitude will likely be less than optimal to make meaningful change happen. You will very likely be a hot, frustrated, reactive mess, quite literally. So again, I just mentioned that your metabolism basically refers to how well your cells do their job. Well, metabolic function is hugely impacted by stress. And not getting enough sleep, not allowing for enough restoration in your day is very stressful to the human body. Sleep and restoration is where metabolic magic happens. It's what fortifies our chemical health. And so as we roll into the holiday season, if nothing else, try to fiercely protect your sleep. Carve out some space in the day to do nothing, to read a book, to take a bath, to take a gentle walk through the woods. And manage your thinking about what you make those things mean. I'm being lazy. I'm not being productive. I shouldn't be doing this. You could think those things, but if you do, you're not going to allow yourself adequate recovery. So remember, sleep and recovery is where the magic of health happens. And if you're cutting it short, if you're not carving out enough time for it, your cells will struggle to do their job. Your chemistry will be out of balance. And everything you try to do for your health will feel like you're trying to move through molasses. It'll feel hard, unnecessarily hard. The second thing, super simple, free of charge, very accessible to us living in, first world countries, is hydration. Drinking water. I have seen hydration move some of the most stubborn bodies and some of the most disrupted chemistry. And it makes sense when you consider all that water does inside of the human body. There is literally not a process in the human body that does not depend on water to some degree. Water is really the primary building block of your cells. And you are a mass of trillions of cells. Every tissue, every organ, every system in the human body is a compilation of cells. So to say that water does a body good is not an exaggeration. So when we talked earlier about the jobs that your cells do, Keep in mind that hydration helps your cells to produce, utilize, and store energy. Water helps your cells to absorb, assimilate, and transport nutrients. It helps you to build, organize tissues and systems. It helps your cells to produce and mobilize hormones. Water is the most important nutrient to the human body, and it is the most abundant substance in the human body, which is why you can survive longer without food than you can without water. So, we all know that in the holiday season, as we approach the end of the year, and honestly, even without it being the holiday season, what's true is that alcohol is everywhere. Alternatives to water are everywhere. Coffee and tea and juices and other beverages are really easily accessible. So just the simple action of swapping out some of those alternatives for water can help your chemistry immensely. The third thing that I want to mention is nutrition, eating real food. There are hundreds of different nutrition methodologies out there. You may be somebody who gets easily overwhelmed by all of the different dieting strategies that are available to you. And quite frankly, every wellness nutrition professional has a different opinion about which one is best. So it can be madness to navigate the world of nutrition. But there is one thing that pretty much everybody seems to agree on, which is eating real food is a great thing for every body. So I always say that eating, real food is food that's found in a whole form. It's not in a package or a box or a can or a bag. And I will also say that I do realize, of course, that not every real food option works for everybody's chemistry. But I see so many women buying into health products promising to improve their health when much of their diet is still consisting of a lot of processed foods. And again, processed foods are easily accessible. They're everywhere. And please don't hear me saying never eat them. I am suggesting you consider how much of your diet is made up of them. And rather than thinking about food as good or bad, I always encourage my students to think on the spectrum of good, better, and best. Right? So eating is good. Feeding your body is good. And when you consider what your diet is made up of, let's just say a dinner, let's just say Friday night dinner, which for a lot of people can often be pizza. Pizza's fun, pizza's delicious, pizza is easy. So eating pizza is good. Eating pizza is better than not eating at all. But how can we make it a little bit better? Well, the suggestion I've given before, that I'll give again, is having a salad, right? A really hearty salad. Better yet, a hearty salad with some protein on it alongside of that pizza, because the vegetables and the protein will help to satiate you so you don't take the pizza quite as far. You don't eat so much of it. There's also ways that you can improve the quality of the pizza. Instead of ordering it out, you could make your own. Instead of using a wheat crust, you could try an alternative crust. Not saying you have to, right? You need to enjoy your food, but there are ways, easy ways, to incorporate more real food into a meal. And I always suggest that you subtract the processed, like the really highly processed foods before you add complex measures to your diet. And so, an analogy for this would be like trying to add wheatgrass to a diet that's made up mostly of fast food. That wheatgrass isn't really going to affect your body very much unless you reduce the amount of fast food that you're eating. So, where are the spaces and places in your diet where you could easily swap a processed food for a real food? I always, we use a lot of, instead of like French fries for dinner, because who doesn't love French fries? I get it. They taste delicious. But I will often make sweet potato fries in the oven when we have something like burgers or we have some steak, something where a fry would taste delicious. I just, again, look at my good, better, and best spectrum. How can I make this choice just a little bit better? Eating real food seems like such a simple thing. However, it's not for so many reasons. Accessibility for a lot of people, depending on where you live, depending on income. I realize this can be more complex than it sounds. So don't stress yourself out by thinking you have to overhaul everything. But how could you just make one slightly better choice today? The other element that, of course, helps our chemistry to thrive is movement. Notice I didn't say exercise, although exercise is within movement. It's a type of movement. But there are lots of movement options available to you outside of exercise. So we call this NEAT, right? Non-exercise related thermogenesis. NEAT is a way that your metabolism utilizes energy. But utilizing energy is not the only benefit of non-exercise related movement. It also helps to lubricate our joints. It helps us to build more muscle. It helps to stimulate the good chemistry in our body. Again, hormones. It helps us to elevate our energy. It helps us to build confidence to take on more complex movements like exercise. So finding a lot of ways to move your body more throughout the day can go a really long way in helping to keep your chemistry in harmony. So this means you don't sit in front of a computer screen for hours on end, that you set a timer or you have some kind of trigger to remind you to get up and move. Health isn't a byproduct of spending an hour of your day in like a brutal boot camp class and then sitting on your butt for the next 12 hours. Health is about moving your body often and much throughout the day because that's what it was designed to do, and that's what it deserves. And just like eating real food, something that sounds so simple that costs us nothing, movement doesn't cost us anything. It can be really difficult when we live in a culture of convenience. We actually have to apply effort to move our bodies more this day and age because we don't have to hunt for our food. We don't have to walk very far if we don't want to. Convenience is killing us. But our joints, our brains, our bodies, in every way, our muscles, our hormonal systems, even our gut health is benefited with regular movement. Now, I want to just kind of throw out here, those of you who listen to the podcast, you know that I have a private community called Rumble and Rise. And in the month of November, our focus is specifically on movement. So if you are someone who is looking to expand your capacity to move more throughout the day, joining in the month of November might be a great idea for you. Remember, there's no long-term commitment. You can join the membership for a month and leave if you want to. And yes, we will be talking about exercise, but the theme of November is not exclusive to exercise. We're really talking about movement throughout the day and how to bake more into our lives. So you can always find out more about Rumble and Rise by going to graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. Now, the fifth element that I want to talk about today is connection and community. Now, if you do access that free 5-day video series that I mentioned earlier, the 5 to Thrive, I want you to know that when I created that video series, I did not include connection and community. And I really wish I had. I will at some point go back and redo that video series. But community and connection is such a vital nutrient that it absolutely should have been put in that video series. Humans are communal creatures. Our chemistry is deeply affected by our willingness to connect with other humans. Now, Emma Sapala, she's a lecturer at Yale School of Management, and she runs women's leadership programs. But she wrote an article a while back. I want to just highlight this piece of what she wrote because I think it speaks so beautifully to this concept of how important connection is to our biology. She says, "We are profoundly social creatures. At the root of all of our desires is a need to be loved and to belong. A sense of social connection is one of our fundamental human needs, and it impacts our health, physical health, and longevity." One telling study showed that lack of social connection is a greater detriment to our health than obesity, smoking, and high blood pressure. On the flip side, strong social connection leads to a 50% increased chance of longevity. Social connection strengthens our immune system, helps us recover from disease faster, and may even lengthen our life. People who feel more connected to others have lower rates of anxiety and depression. Moreover, studies show how they also have higher self-esteem, are more empathetic to others, more trusting and cooperative as a consequence. And social connectedness, therefore, generates a positive feedback loop of social, emotional, and physical well-being. Unfortunately, the opposite is also true for those who lack social connectedness. Low social connection has been generally associated with declines in physical and psychological health, as well as a higher propensity to antisocial behavior that leads to further isolation. And you can find this article. It's called Connection to Thrive, Social Connection to Well-Being and Longevity. And it's on emmasapala.com, her website. So again, going into the holiday season, this connected piece, I hope it will inspire you to carve out and fiercely protect time with your loved ones, friends and family, even meeting new people. Because again, connection is such a linchpin to our metabolic health, to our chemistry. So before we go, I just want to reiterate these 5 elements we just discussed that will help you to physically and mentally thrive, because everything that happens, right? We aren't just a body, we aren't just a brain. These 2 things are so highly connected. And so the 5 that we reviewed are number 1, sleep and restoration, hydration, real food, movement, and connection. And 3 reasons that we struggle with applying these basic measures is, again, number 1, we have unreasonable expectations. We try to change way too much too fast. And so our strategy is flawed, which is why we can't seem to feel like we're getting traction with these things. We also have a lot of interesting beliefs about this work, about making small changes over time. We have interesting beliefs that things this simple couldn't possibly improve our health story. And that's why I said earlier, I do so much work around thought management with my students, because we have to manage our brains in order to change our beliefs around these things. And of course, another really big reason we don't do these things is because we aren't willing to get uncomfortable. It seems silly, right? That like drinking more water would be uncomfortable, but it is. Because if you're someone who's used to drinking Diet Coke all day long or drinking coffee all day long, making that shift to even having water after every cup of coffee, it requires effort. It requires you to be in a space of responsiveness rather than reactivity. And the brain does not like a ton of effort. It does not like to be uncomfortable. So how can we make these things easy? Well, there's a lot of ways we can set ourselves up for easy success, like having water on our desk, paying attention to how much water we're drinking throughout the day. But we can also manage our brain in a way to not make it feel so hard. I don't have to drink water. I get to drink water. How awesome that something as simple as water can massively help out my cells' ability to do their jobs. So those simple mindset shifts can go a long way in helping you to be consistent. So 2 invitations for you. Number 1, if you want the free video series, graceandgrit.com/5 to thrive. And if you are interested in joining us inside of Rumble and Rise for the month of November to work on in expanding your movement profile and incorporating more movement into your day, you can join us by going to graceandgrit.com/ready to rumble. And it's $59 a month. The membership is $59 a month. But like I said, you can join for a month and leave, or hopefully, likely, you'll want to stay because it's a pretty spectacular place. All right, my friends, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you again next week. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Grace and Grit podcast. It is time to mend the fabric of the female health story, and it starts with you taking radical responsibility for your own self-care. You are worth the effort, and with a little grace and grit, anything is possible.